A third of the people love you, a third don't care about you, and a third hate you. So you concentrate on the third that love you and you go for it.
I think the greatest Achilles heel for leaders is they don't give themselves time to think.
So my journey is one of those, like, there are a lot of detours. There's a lot of going off on the side roads.
Thrive Out listeners, you're in for a treat. We're here with Jamal Mashburn,
Jesse Itzler,
the John Maxwell,
Jackie the Joke Man Martling, New York Rangers great Mike Richter,
Lisa Lampanelli,
Mary Carrillo.
Oh, how nice.
I'm actually going through the practice of being an entrepreneur.
Pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and thrive loud.
Get ready to thrive loud with Lou Diamond.
I love it.
Hey, Thrive Loud fans, Lou Diamond here. I love when we tap into the library of bedside readings, authors that thrive. And in this particular time, we get to connect with Michelle Cox, whose book comes out this month, A Child Lost. You're going to love this conversation I had with her. Really interesting story, fun writer, great person, and sit back and relax and enjoy this special episode pulled from Bedside Readings Authors That Thrive. Here on Thrive Loud, it's Michelle Cox.
Welcome to Bedside Readings Authors That Thrive, a podcast show that provides you exclusive access to top writers around the globe and how they are thriving through their writing, their passions, and their lives. Here's your host, Lou Diamond.
Welcome, everyone, to Bedside Readings Authors That Thrive, connecting you to amazing authors that are thriving through their work and in their lives each and every day. I'm your host, Lou Diamond. Today, we have an author of the multiple award-winning Henrietta and Inspector Howard series, as well as Novel Notes of Local Lore, a weekly blog dedicated to Chicago's forgotten residents. She thinks she may have once lived in the 1930s, and having yet to discover a handy time machine lying around, has resorted to writing about the era as a way of getting herself back there. Her fifth book comes out in late April of 2020, A Child Lost. I'm excited to introduce you all to Michelle Cox. Michelle, how are you today?
Great. Thanks, Lou. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so judging by the fact that I have some images of what you look like and I've had a conversation with you, you're not from the 1930s.
No.
So where did this, I guess, general focus of your life get directed to this particular era? What connected you back to that time period?
Well, that's a great question. To be honest, I've always kind of had a more of an affinity for the 40s, but I used to work in a nursing home on the northwest side of Chicago right out of college, and I heard so many stories from the 30s and 40s from people who were in the nursing home that was their heyday, and they just had amazing stories, and that's what I collect for my blog, but that's a different story. So when I was starting to write this series, well, it actually just started out as a single book. I took one of the women's stories from the nursing home and sort of based the character of Henrietta around her. And the reason I put it in the 30s was because she had this strange job at the Chicago World's Fair, which was 1933. Yeah. And I really wanted to include that detail in the book. So I thought, all right, I can write a book about the 30s, not realizing that it was going to end up being a series. But yeah, so now I'm pretty familiar with the 30s, having written 5 books set in that era.
You know, it's interesting. It sounds like you have the ability to be a great listener as a way of working with those people in the home and communicating as a vehicle. This story, has that always been the case in your life, as someone who is able to listen and transpose into a story?
Yeah, that's very astute. I am a big listener. I tend to be the one that that's always sort of the sounding board for people. And when I worked at this home, that was my job. I started out as admissions director and then moved into social service. And, it was fantastic because then it was my official job to listen, and try to help where I could. But I really loved that. And I think I was really skilled at that and really able to get people to talk and to trust me and to, share their secrets. So
going back even earlier in that, when you were younger,
mm-hmm.
did you have an affinity towards stories and storytelling?
Well, I always say that one of my greatest Christmas presents ever was the complete set of Louisa May Alcott books. And I used to try to write like what I didn't realize was called at the time, but it was almost like little fan fiction. So I would try to take her stories and sort of jump off from there. But I was never happy with where the stories went. So I ended up just trying to illustrate them instead. But I always kind of wanted to be a writer. I was good at writing, but I was always too afraid to really try it.
When did you take the leap to start the writing?
It really wasn't until recently, until like probably 2013, I think I started, or 2012. Yeah, I mean, I thought about it in college, going down that path, but it was so scary to me that I went down pre-med instead because I thought that was easier than being a writer, which turns out to kind of be true. But halfway through, I thought, you know what, I have to be true to myself, and so I switched to not creative writing, but to literature. So I graduated with a lit degree, and then proceeded to work in this nursing home and had a lot of other crazy jobs. And then, I ended up getting married and being a stay-at-home mom. And then when my oldest was diagnosed with ADHD, I was volunteering and doing all this committee work, and I just, quit and said, what are you doing? You need to just, be focused on your kids. And it didn't really take that long, to get them on the right path or get some tutors and all that. So then I had all this time, and I thought, instead of going back to what you were doing, maybe this is your chance to write the novel that you always wondered if you could write.
I'm fascinated by the writing process and how authors like you get into, I guess, your writing zone. Do you have sort of a ritual or a very scheduled type of behavior, or is it very ad hoc? Talk to us a little bit about what your process is for taking what is being construed in your brain and getting it on paper.
Well, I'm pretty type A. So I am pretty disciplined. I get the kids out to school in the morning. They get on the bus at 6:50. And so then I basically march upstairs. I get like 5 minutes to sort of scan through email to make sure there's, no disaster or, I didn't win the Pulitzer or something. And then I start working. So I'm not allowed to respond to email. I'm not allowed to look at social media. I have to just look at the manuscript that I'm doing. And I work on that for about an hour to 2 hours. And then I turn my attention to pretty much marketing and PR for the whole rest of the day until the kids come home. So
let's. I'm going to make an assumption here that the first novel with Henrietta and Inspector Howard in that series, the process and how you came up with that content was a little different than the sequential ones.
Yes.
Can you talk about the difference between first getting it started and then continuing the story?
Yeah, you ask really great questions. You must have been doing this for a while. Right?
Could be.
That's a great question. I used to, when I was first writing A Girl Like You, which is the first book, I used to try to get all of my, errands and household tasks done and all this kind of stuff. And then, use writing as sort of a reward at the end of that. But what I found was that I was pretty much brain dead by that point. So that just quickly started to not work. So I switched it to be the first thing I did in the morning, and that worked a lot better because that's when my brain is the crispest. And I also changed the way I did editing. So I used to edit anywhere, like swim
jumping.
lessons, or, sitting on the side, or in hotel rooms. If we were on vacation, I would sneak out of the room and look for a deserted, quiet spot in the hotel, sometimes even stairwells, and edit. Or I would in bed at night. And then I would realize that, if I'm so tired, I would be reading page after page and not finding any mistakes. I'm like, wow, this is so great. But really, it was just because I was tired and not catching anything. So that had to change too. So everything is done first thing in the morning.
In your creative stories along the way, and I guess as ideas come to you, and this is a question that I like asking. It's really interesting for those that have multiple books. Do you find that these characters, even though from a different time era, live a little bit in you and almost speak to you as you're writing?
Yeah, they really do. And I used to hear writers say that, characters would talk to them or tell them that they wanted to do something different in the story. And I'm like, oh, come on, please. But now that I'm in it, it really does happen that way. And they do become these real people to you. And an example is that I created this sort of playlist from 30s music and 40s music that I just played for pretty much 3 years in a loop in the car. So the kids really hated me for a while. And anyway, I would say, oh, you guys, this is Clive and Henrietta's favorite song. And they would just look at me like, Mom, they're not real. I'm like, no, but they are. So yeah, they're in my brain all the time.
So it's one thing to write a book one time around to get a story out. And it's certainly even more an accomplishment to create a second, a third, a fourth, and now a fifth. Obviously, we don't want to go through the whole series in the past. And in that, what are you most excited about as this fifth book is coming out? And what makes it kind of stand out and unique? Because you seem to be progressing further and further, making them better and better each time. Thanks.
Yeah, I think I am. This book is exciting because I think early reviewers have really loved it, have commented that it's the best book of the series so far. And I would agree with that. I have a lot of storylines going on now, and it was really a challenge because usually I have 2 storylines kind of flipping back and forth, and this time I tried a third. And it was a challenge, but I really think I pulled it off. And the characters are really pretty far now in their developmental arc, and so it's fun for fans to read along and see what's going on with all of the characters. And also, I feel like this one, is really a mystery. Some of the other ones have more of a mystery element, or the mystery is not really the focus, but this one has not just one mystery, but actually 2. So that's exciting.
Awesome. I love asking this question, Michelle, and I'm interested to see where it goes. There are days that you're in the zone and things are flowing and you're writing great, or life is going well. And then there are days that you're not kicking on all cylinders. Yeah. On days when you're not truly thriving, what practice do you seek or individual do you seek out to get yourself back on the thriving track?
The thing that I find works the most is taking a walk, actually. I know other authors have said that too, but I've read that Charles Dickens used to walk the streets of London in the middle of the night for hours. And I used to think that was because he was, looking for all of these sort of odd characters that might just come out at night. And maybe that was part of it. But I think it might have had something to do with just the back and forth of the feet. It actually does something to your brain, and I get a lot of ideas that way.
Backdrop of books can be a character in themselves. Obviously, as you mentioned, you wanted that first story of being Chicago, and you are. Can you share? You're a native of Chicago. I think we're allowed to share that with the listeners here. How important is that city to you as you write your content, and how much of a character do you feel it plays in your stories?
Well, I do think it does play a bit of a character, at least in my mind, because I am so enmeshed in not just the woman whose story Henrietta is based on, but all of those people that I met in the nursing home, and they have such a colorful life that I think writing about setting the series in Chicago is kind of a way of bringing those people to life, because I might use a little bit from somebody's story and weave it into the series. So I think it's absolutely essential. There's a little bit of reference to, the Al Capone stuff, but not a ton. But there's certainly a gangster element to some of the books. And what I think is fun is that part of the story is set in Chicago, but then part of it takes place in Winnetka, which is, north of the city, which is a very wealthy suburb. So it's kind of fun to incorporate that too, the sort of haves and have-nots that was, so prevalent in the 30s in particular.
So the 5th book is coming out late April here, A Child Lost. Mm-hmm. And when you completed it, and I have not finished reading it, so I because it hasn't come out yet. Is there more to come?
Well, we shall see. Right now, I would love to, and I have many devoted fans who are begging me to keep the series going. And I would love to, but I took a little break from the series, and because normally by the time one of the books is coming out, I've already got the next book written, at least, a first draft. And that is not the case this time, but I am working on 2 other standalones that I am hoping to get released. So I'm kind of waiting to see what happens with those and kind of see how book 5 is received before I dive into book 6. But I would love to keep it going.
Would you love to see this content live in a different format, meaning be brought to life in some movie or TV show or something
like that? Well, it's currently being produced on audio, so that's great. But yeah, again, I if I had $1 for every reader who has written to me and said, this would be a great Netflix series, I'd be rich. Because it's really a very visual. Many people actually say it reads like a movie, so it would be a great series. So if you know any film agents, pass them along.
We've had some on the show. We could talk.
Ooh, okay. Yay.
So I want to end with this question, because I ask a lot of guests on the Thrive programs, not only what their favorite movie is, but also potentially what their favorite song is. What is that 1930s favorite song that you like to hear listening to the car that your kids are sick of? Do you know the name of it?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. Probably The Way You Look Tonight is one of my all-time favorites. Yeah.
That was great. Michelle Cox, this has been so much fun. Excited for the book. April 28th, 2020, I think is the date you said.
That's right.
A Child Lost coming out. We will have all the links here for where to get it in Bedside Readings, Authors That Thrive. And I can't thank you enough for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me, Lou. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Authors That Thrive. Brought to you by Bedside Reading. To learn more about today's guest, head on over to bedsidereading.com. And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, or follow us everywhere on social media at Bedside Reading.
You've been listening to Thrive Loud with your host, Lou Diamond. Check us out on the web at thriveloud.com and follow us on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook at Thrive Loud. And check us out on the Good Pods app at Thrive Loud, where you can follow, listen, and connect directly to Lou and all of the Thrive Loud episodes. Thanks for listening.